And Megan, would you call the roll? Would you call the roll, please?
1 second, Judge.
Oh, Megan, you're starting up the YouTube feed?
Kathleen is, yes.
Kathleen, great. Thank you, Kathleen.
Start it. Okay, with roll. The Honorable Sharon Keller,
Here.
Mr. Alex Bunnan,
Here.
the Honorable Valerie Covey, the Honorable Brandon Creighton, the Honorable Richard Evans,
Here.
Mr. Gonzalo Rios, the Honorable Nathan Heck, the Honorable Missy Maderi,
Here.
the Honorable Nicole Collier, the Honorable Reggie Smith,
Here.
the Honorable Sherry Raddick,
Here.
the Honorable Vivian Torres,
Here.
the Honorable John Whitmer. Judge, we have quorum.
Thank you. Is there, trying to find the motions. Is there a?
Commissioner Covey has actually just joined us.
Okay. Hello?
She's working.
I'm having trouble finding the motions, but is there a motion to approve the August 19th, 2021 and October 1st, 2021 minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. I don't have a report, so I'm gonna let us move right on to the director's report with Jeff. Jeff?
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. A lot going on at TIDC. I just want to highlight a few things for you. First, we're welcoming 2 new staff. We have with us today, Crystal Left-Pignon. Crystal joins us from many years working in child protective services cases. She was a prosecutor. She was at the institutional CPS provider office here. She worked at a nonprofit. So she brings a lot of child protective services experience to TIDC. If you remember, about 2 sessions ago, the legislature directed the Office of Court Administration to start collecting CPS data. And essentially the decision by this board and by the Judicial Council was to kind of piggyback that CPS data collection on TIDC's data collection. You'll hear much more from Crystal later today. We've had, I'm pretty excited about it. We've had pretty good success early on in CPS data collection. So welcome, Crystal. We're excited to have you here. We're also welcoming Olivia Lee, who's a recent UT law grad. Olivia has been great, has really hit the ground running as a new policy analyst here. Unfortunately, Olivia is attending a family member's funeral today and couldn't be with us, but she's been wonderful so far. A couple other highlights: the Fair Defense Act. Believe it or not, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of the Fair Defense Act, and the state bar is looking at holding a small event to commemorate that. They're looking at a virtual event toward the end of January, half-day kind of virtual event with speakers, and they've asked TIDC staff to help suggest speakers and help plan that. So we'll keep you all posted on that and get a date for you pretty soon. I think it says, yeah, January 28th. We've just decided on the date. So we'll try to get the board members an invitation to that if you'd like to attend. 2 last things. One is Operation Lone Star. You'll remember that this is the program that was launched by the governor back in March. Under Operation Lone Star, essentially DPS officers are arresting people who migrated illegally into the United States, often arresting for criminal trespass. TIDC has been very involved in helping to fund the criminal defense portion of Operation Lone Star. And we speak on a regular basis to the Office of Court Administration, Texas Department of Emergency Management, DPS, the governor's office, the prosecutors, basically everybody involved in Operation Lone Star. I'm going to hand it over just briefly to Bill Cox, one of our senior policy analysts who's been very involved in OLS, to give you a brief update on what's going on with Operation Lone Star.
Good morning. We've been working very closely with the Lubbock Private Defender's Office to be sure that everyone who is eligible for counsel that comes through central magistration receives appointed counsel. A large part of that effort has involved Lubbock private defenders cross-checking their lists of individuals for whom counsel's been appointed with lists from the Texas Department of Emergency Management, the Department of Public Safety, and also out of the OCA Central Magistration site. We continue working with that, and with the Central Magistration, the volume has been very consistent. There's been approximately 500 people each month that have come through that have been magistrated. Some have bonded out. It's been around from September to the present, 130 to 150 people who have been released on bond. The rest have then been transferred to either Bristow or Segovia, and their cases have moved forward from there.
Thank you, Bill. So, I mean, I think the big takeaways with Operation Lone Star, it is ongoing. You know, we're looking at roughly 15 arrests per day. It's been relatively steady. We are hearing some talk that the numbers might start going up relatively soon, so we're trying to prepare for that, and just really making sure that everybody receives counsel in Operation Lone Star cases. So we'll continue to update you that in future board meetings.
Hey, Jeff, if I can jump in, let me ask you a question. So I'm understanding that they're going to open up another facility. That's going to jump those numbers up.
That's exactly what we're hearing, Judge, that, you know, just so everybody knows what Judge Maderi is referring to, there is a centralized booking and magistration facility in Del Rio, where most of the OLS arrests that take place in multiple counties around that area are sent to. So essentially they're booked in the Del Rio facility, they're magistrated remotely in the Del Rio facility, and then they're taken to TDCJ facilities, right now either Briscoe unit, or which is in Frio County, or the Segovia unit down in Hidalgo County. That's where we're seeing those basically 15 arrests per day, about 15 people roughly coming through that facility every day. And Judge, you're exactly right, that what we're hearing is somewhere in the valley, they may be opening a second centralized booking and magistration facility. And we expect exactly what you're saying, which is that we think those numbers are going to bump up following that. So we're trying to prepare for that now before that happens.
Thanks, Jeff.
Sure, Judge. Any other questions about Operation Lone Star? The last thing I wanted to share, I'm pretty excited about this. So in the third special session, the legislature was trying to determine how to allocate and appropriate federal ARPA funding. This is the American Rescue Plan Act funding. The state of Texas received approximately $16 billion from the federal government as part of ARPA. And during the third special session, they were trying to determine how to distribute those funds. TIDC, we requested funds really in kind of two ways. One, we asked for money to help make up for our loss in revenue. So you may remember about 75% of our revenue comes from the collection of court costs. That took a big hit when COVID hit. So we lost a lot of revenue to the Fair Defense account. So we did ask for those funds. Unfortunately, we did not receive those funds to make up for the funds that we lost. But we also asked for some funds to help out counties to address COVID-related backlogs. If you look across the state of Texas, we have roughly 70,000 misdemeanors and roughly 70,000 felonies that are backlogged across the state. So these are more cases basically than we would have seen in years past. So we asked in part for the legislature to provide funding to help us address the backlog and get those funds out to counties to help build systems that'll help address those. And the legislature appropriated $14 million in ARPA funds to TIDC. The language in the bill I included in my director's report, you can see here on page 10, that is restricted. It is strictly for addressing the backlog. It's not unrestricted funds. And we'll talk a little bit more about these funds and an RFA to help get these funds out the door very quickly a little bit later on in the meeting. I think that's all I've got. Like I said, the big highlights are new staff, Fair Defense Act anniversary coming up, Operation Lone Star, and then these federal ARPA funds. I'm happy to answer any questions, but if there aren't any, we have a really short but kind of a cool video that features our own Judge Evans in it that we'd like to play. But let me pause for a second to see if you all have any questions before we do that. Okay. Megan, you want to pull up the video? Are you all getting volume on that?
No.
Okay, we aren't either. We'll try our best in this and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then we'll try it a little bit later in the meeting.
Click the to the left of that, Megan.
So nothing.
Now it's kind of just in and out.
You need to share audio as well.
What is the suggestion?
The button right next to it, where you're going 55, that one, hit that. Oh no, that just unmuted. Sorry. Yeah, it's kind of coming in and out. It sounds like a Predator movie.
Not sure.
That's okay, Megan. I tell you what, Kathleen, because I know you know how to share audio on this. If you want to send a Teams message to Megan to walk her through that, and we'll try it again just a little bit later in the meeting. That's okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. Thank you, Megan. Sorry about the hiccup, y'all. Judge, I think that's all I have for my report.
Judge Keller, do you want me to take over on grants and reporting at this time?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Okay, sure. Well, as I am so good at this, I'm going to turn it right over to Edwin.
Thank you, Judge.
Yep.
So if you turn to page 11 in the meeting book, we have a brief report on preliminary results from the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report for FY 2021. As you all know, all the counties every year report to us on their total indigent defense expenditures. The kind of headline here, so just a quick update, since we prepared the meeting book, we now have 252 counties, so only 2 that have not completed their report. So that's good compliance, and we're working with those couple of counties that have had some unique problems. And staff is working on a desk review of all these reports to give them a preliminary check and try to identify any glaring issues and ensure their accuracy. So that desk review is ongoing, and these reports or these results are preliminary. But really the headline is that the reduction in spending that we saw last year has only barely started to recover. In 2019, the total spending was about $299 million. In 2020, the previous fiscal year we reported on, we were at 200 and what is it? I think it was at 265 million approximately. And we're looking right now at 271 million for FY 2021. So spending has still been impacted by COVID-19. It's starting to move back in the positive direction, but our best projection with the data that we have so far is that we're going to fall somewhere around 271 million in total county spending, which is substantially less than we had seen just a couple of years earlier. So we can move to so that's kind of a high level overview. Crystal can now give you a report on our first effort to collect spending data on CPS related cases. So I'll hand it over to Crystal.
Hi, everybody. I'm Crystal Lefpignon. It's nice to meet you all virtually. Maybe someday we'll meet in person. But I'm really excited to talk to you all about the new CPS reporting. As some of you may remember, there's some new reporting requirements according to SB 560. That's from the 86th legislature, so not this last one, but the one before, that are now requiring counties to report both financial information and judicial plan information, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But for now, I just want to give you some quick, brief highlights of the financial info that we're getting. And I do want to let y'all know, in the child welfare world, this is really exciting that we're doing this. Prior to TIDC doing this work, nobody else knew how much money was being spent on these cases. We kind of had an estimate, but now we're getting actual numbers, which is really exciting. And y'all should be excited that TIDC is sort of like the pioneers in this whole process. So as far as what we're seeing, we've had pretty good engagement from the counties. particularly because this is really new. We've had 224 counties as of November 18th submit some kind of report, either expenditure information, appointment information, or both. Considering this is new, that's pretty good. I have identified about 70 counties, excuse me, that have potential issues, counties that haven't reported, things like that. I'm going through and calling them individually, and that number will go up as I can get through everybody. The statewide summary, this is also helpful to know. What we've seen so far as of November 18th is that the statewide spending was around $62 million. That number will probably go up a bit once everyone else gets in. But that's total what we're spending on representation for kids and parents in the state so far. I have a breakdown of the cost there if you want to take a look at it in a little bit more depth. One thing I do want to note, the appointment numbers, they seem a little bit off this year. I think that's something that we can work on improving and working with the counties. And I am working on some education and assistance with counties to try to get that number right for the next report. And then one thing to know is this is a phased approach that we're taking. So for fiscal year 21, which is the very first time we're asking counties to report, we only ask for summary expenditure data and total numbers of appointments. In the next fiscal year, we're going to be asking that those expenditures be broken down into different categories. So we get a little bit more information from the counties about how the money is being spent. And then another just quick highlight, when I look at the county breakdown, we've got 11 counties that are spending 58% of the total dollars in our whole state. And those are the top 11 counties there in the board book that you can see. So I know we have a lot to cover, so I'll keep it at that. But if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thanks, Crystal.
Edwin, before we move on, I just want to mention real quick. I mean, I think Wesley and I especially, we were reviewing some of the data that Crystal helped collect, and we were pretty blown away that the number of counties reporting for CPS has been roughly in line with the number of counties reporting for criminal cases for indigent defense. We expected it to be much lower, especially this being kind of the first go round. So a lot of that's thanks to Crystal's excellent work presenting at TAC and other organizations. So we're pretty excited about it. So thank you, Crystal, for all the good work on this.
Okay, so I guess we're going to page 14 for some financial updates. The first page here that we're going to take a look at, which is page 14 in your meeting book, is inflows into the Fair Defense account. And this is one of the first opportunities that we have to share with you some good news about a bounce back in our revenue flows. So what this chart shows is kind of a three-year snapshot of receipts into the Fair Defense account. And what I'd like to draw your attention to is the box that's kind of in the middle of the page that says presents receipts from September through November in each of the most recent fiscal years. So the FY22, what we're in now, in the two previous fiscal years. And you'll see that the court cost revenue for FY 2020 in that limited period was just about 8.1 million. In FY 21, for the same period, that dropped to 6.3 million, roughly. And this year, we're seeing it move back into the positive direction, growing back to more normal levels. And it's at 7.6 million in collected court costs for the September through November period. So this is a pretty good indication that revenues are starting to bounce back. More cases are being addressed in the courts, and we're hopefully returning to more normal inflows into the Fair Defense account. We can move to the next page, Megan. So we also have a budget update on our previous fiscal years that still have activity in them on page 15, I believe. And we still have a number of grants that were awarded out of FY20 and FY21 funds that are still active and that we're paying out. So that's on page 15. And a brief just report on the kind of status of those previous budget years. But we have quite a few grants that we're paying, particularly out of FY21, in order to make sure that those funds are fully utilized. We awarded them before the end of the fiscal year, and that allows us to continue to draw down those older funds before we start to spend our appropriations for the current biennium. You can go to page 16 now, Megan. Page 16 is just a budget status report for our current budget. We don't have much financial activity as of yet because we're still relatively early in the fiscal year, but we are going to be processing a number of grant payments. And so by our March report, you'll see a lot more financial activity, but right now there's very little reflected in terms of disbursements under the current budget. And I believe that concludes the budget reports, and I'll turn it over to Doriana to go over the FY22 formula grant awards.
Thank you, Edwin. If I could direct y'all to page 17 of the meeting book, I'll be using page 17 and the supplemental information that was sent out early this morning for a brief update on the formula grant program. So at the August 19th meeting, the Commission adopted the FY22 Formula Grant Request for Applications, or RFA. There were no changes to the formula that determines the award amount, and we had budgeted $20.5 million for the program. So as Edwin mentioned earlier, county spending in FY21 increased slightly over FY20, but still remains at about 9% below FY19 levels. And these decreases are associated with reductions in cases paid due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And Megan, if we could please switch over to the preliminary formula grant. Thank you. Excellent. Right. So we sent out these early this morning, and under current policy for our formula grants, eligibility requirements or eligibility requires indigent defense spending above the baseline that was in year 2000. The board has permanently waived the baseline requirements for counties with a population below 10,000, and we've included the relevant policy on this page. So last fiscal year, there were 6 counties that would not have qualified for formula grant awards due to their spending being below the year 2000 baseline, excuse me. And the commission chose to waive the baseline requirements for those 6 counties. This year for FY22, there are 9 counties that are in the same position. Basically, they would not qualify for a formula grant award because their spending isn't above the year 2000 baseline. So we have a staff recommendation or before I actually move on to the staff recommendation, I just wanted to see if there were any questions before we move on, Edwin or any of our board members. Okay, if not, we do have a staff recommendation to award the FY22 formula grants according to the policy that was published in the formula grant request for applications, with the exception of waiving the baseline requirement. Again, it's likely that these significant drops in indigent defense spending are due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Is there a motion to award $20.5 million in FY 2022 formula grants to counties according to the policy published in the FY 22 formula grant RFA, with the exception of the waiver of the baseline in the 9 counties? Yeah, some counties. Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doriana.
So if we could turn to page 18 of our meeting notebook, I want to give a brief update on special conditions. So just as a quick overview, when formula grants are awarded, we place special conditions on awards when counties are not in compliance with plan, reporting, or our grant requirements. So the status of special conditions on our FY22 formula grants as of this morning, there are 3 counties that have not submitted their IDER. There are 75 counties that have outstanding resolutions or have not finalized their application. There are 70 counties that have plans that do not fully comply with TIDC plan requirements, and I believe the policy team will touch more on that later. And we are actually still waiting on numbers from OCA regarding Texas Judicial Council reporting requirements. But again, this is normally in line with previous fiscal years, and staff has been in contact with all of our outstanding counties, and we're expecting to resolve this in the future, or in the near future.
Thanks, Toriana. If there are no questions, we can proceed to a handful of grant modification requests that we'd like to present for you on page 19.
Edwin, before we do, I think, and Judge, if it's okay, I think we have the video up and working. We might take one more crack at that, if that's all right. And see
let's try.
All right, great. Megan, do you want to give it a whirl? And if it doesn't, we'll just scrap it and we'll try to play it for you all another time.
I'll tell you this, I'm very, very grateful for TIDC and the support that we've gotten as it relates to indigent defense. Indigent does not exist in a vacuum, right? When we improve our system as it relates to those that don't have the ability to support themselves, that don't have the ability to hire an attorney, we're improving the system as a whole. I think to set up the domino in a way that the TIDC has done for us locally in Bexar County, it's sort of like a butterfly effect. That one little flap of the wing can set up something that gives us hope. And there's nothing more important for us that work within this system to have than hope. So I thank you for that.
TIDC has been critical to us. I think the biggest support I felt was when I first took the job and we came up with this radical idea of providing counsel at magistration. That's a good example of what the grants can do for a county that TIDC offers. And this was kind of a radical idea. It had never really been tried, and it's really difficult to get a commissioner's court to say we're going to commit money to this until we know if it works or not. So by using a grant, you're able to go through that test period where it's examined and we're able to prove that it's cost effective. And so TIDC has been extremely helpful through funding, but actually their assistance has gone beyond that. I mean, to have a resource who can connect you to other public defenders' offices, who can talk about programs that have been successful, who can talk about issues that other offices have had. Just as a clearinghouse for information, TIDC has helped us tremendously. I really think that providing quality indigent defense is a bipartisan issue. I know our country's very divided, our state's very divided, but if you look at the fiscal sense that it makes, the constitutional sense that it makes, how it makes your community a better place and makes your citizens have more faith in their criminal justice system. I mean, I think public defenders' offices have to become part of that formula because it is going to make everyone's community better. It's not just about representing people. It's about making your community a better place to live.
The biggest improvement you would see is I know my two judges, my district judge and my county court of law judge, if I were to go to them tomorrow and say, we're going to close down the PDO, they would not be happy. So the courts, the judges in our courts, and I think it's the same in Judge Evans' courts, and listening to the other judges, all of the district and county court of law judges, they are extremely satisfied with, one, the quality of representation they're getting, and that lawyers are showing up. I mean, there's a lawyer there in court every day they call a docket. So it's just a great improvement over what we had, and it's not costing us any more money.
What was it that led you to want to set up an office?
With the Regional Public Defender Office, I think we have an opportunity to show the state, particularly the legislature when they do the budgets, that Regional Public Defender's offices are a very efficient way to deliver criminal defense. And I think that the state should shoulder more of that burden, as I've always said, rather than the counties providing 80+% of that. And I think that our success, I think, will go a long way to maybe asking the legislators to, hey, we need more money to take care of rural Texas. My personal opinion.
And so even with this mental health attorney thing that we want to try to apply for, it's a lot more likely for us to get it because TIDC has been helpful. When we apply for grants, I don't know how to write a grant, didn't before I started all this. You know, I can call up and TIDC's like, okay, let me send you, you know, the forms and this is how you do it and just plug in the numbers here. I know when we applied for the stuff for the PDO, they were immensely helpful. And so when we have problems with text share, I just call up and all the answers are right there. And now Christy's got the direct line and she just calls and it's just taken care of, you know, and it's made so easy for us. And it's this huge burden off my chest because I'm so busy. I'm one person and I'm all over the place. I'm in court or I'm going and doing all these different things where, you know, TIDC has really made it easy for us to handle these different grants or these different things with whether it's indigent defense or, you know, the PDO. It's easier to swallow all these unfunded mandates when TIDC is there ready to help us.
Well, thank you, Megan. And thanks you all for your patience with the technical difficulties, but we hear good things about TIDC pretty often from the judiciary and county stakeholders, and we thought you should hear it too. So thanks especially to Judge Evans for being a good sport and being on camera for this one.
That was good. Is that a Steve Miller production?
Steve Miller production.
It's nice.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what an evolution it's been since TIDC started. The attitude towards TIDC. I remember one of the first conferences that I went to, everyone was hostile towards y'all. Yeah, Edwin's laughing because he was there. And I don't know why, but I had an opportunity to speak and I just said, you know, these guys are not here to hurt you. They're here only to help you. And now I see the evolution and it's finally clear. And y'all have done such a great job with your mission, carrying it out and doing it fairly and helping instead of hurting. And I think that people are starting to see that now. So you have a whole different attitude when you walk into a county these days.
Thank you, Judge. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So I guess we should just plow on through to the grant modification requests. So on page 19, we have the first of a handful of grant modification requests. The commission approved a very small grant to Webb County at a recent meeting for a weekend indigent defense coordinator. The county had recently extended regular magistration hearings to weekends, and they needed to provide indigent defense coordinator coverage to make sure that those folks' requests for counsel were processed in a timely manner. They've had a lot of trouble hiring for this position, this part-time position. They've asked for a modest increase of $5,800 in the award, which would make it go from $11,561 to $17,339 in order to provide overtime pay to temporarily cover the gap until they can find a suitable full-time or rather part-time new employee. So the recommendation here is to approve Webb County's request to increase its grant to $17,339. We have a motion.
Is there a motion to increase the FY22 improvement grant award to Webb County to $17,339?
I'll make
So
that
moved.
motion.
I think I heard a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, on page 20, we have a small request from Medina County for their Indigent Defense Coordinator grant. There was a little bit of confusion between myself and the county at the time that they were requesting their continuing award. And so this is trying to address just a minor oversight with their application for their continued funding. So they're going into the third year of a 80-60-40-20 improvement grant for an indigent defense coordinator. So at this point, the county is funding a majority of the program and the TIDC grant is covering 40%. And they've requested increasing the award by $1,136 for FY22 to cover increases in benefits costs and a COLA for the employee. This is normally pretty routine and modest, and our recommendation is to approve the modification of the Medina County award to increase it to $21,896.
Is there a motion to increase the FY22 improvement grant award to Medina County to $21,896?
So moved. Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
Okay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. On page 21, we have a request from Galveston County for and this is not a request that has any budget impact, but it is a request to extend the term of the 2021 grant that will be provided to Galveston County for their new mental health public defender office. That program had some funds in the budget to assist the county with an office build out to accommodate the new program. As y'all are probably familiar, there are a lot of difficulties with construction projects, and there have been lots of delays, and they have requested more time to access the funds in the initial grant that were dedicated to the assistance with the office build out and some of the associated equipment and furniture for the new program. So we're recommending that you approve a limited scope extension of the grant term of their 2021 award through September 30th, 2022 for the parts of the award for the office startup.
Is there a motion to approve a limited scope extension of the grant term to Galveston County through September 30th, 2022 for parts of the award approved for office startup expenses?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And then if we can go down to page 23, also these requests have no impact on the budget, but are just extensions, no cost extensions of grant term. So back when in the 2020-21 biennium, the legislature provided TIDC $5 million specifically targeted toward mental health public defender programs. And the board made several awards. 3 of the counties that received those awards have had significant delays in getting the programs for the expansions implemented. And so so we are proposing to extend the term to allow the counties to access those funds. If we don't extend the term, basically the funds will lapse and they'll go back to the fair defense account, but they won't be available to us as an appropriation. So by extending the term of these awards, we're just allowing the counties more times to access the funds for those mental health defender programs. So there are 3 grants that are in question here, one for Dallas, one for Harris, and one for Lavaca County. And we're recommending that you approve an extension of the term through the end of September 2022.
Is there a motion to extend the 3 mental health defender program grant awards to September 30th, 2022?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
I abstain as to Harris.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think Jeff is going to lay out the last of our grant modification requests.
Sure, thanks, Edwin. So I'm happy to say we don't make too many mistakes when it comes to budgeting for projects and new public defender offices, but we did make one. I did. This one's on me. You all may remember the Future Indigent Defense Leaders Program, the FIDDLE program. That's our mentoring and leadership program for new attorneys across the state. Recently, Arnold Ventures became interested in that project and has funded $500,000 of it. This board has already approved that the next couple of years of that project. However, I failed to include $10,000 for the normal kickoff program that we have at Rusty Duncan every year. So this is a modification that would add essentially $10,000 to that grant to ensure that there's a big kickoff party for each of those. I shouldn't say party, but a big kickoff event for those programs at Rusty Duncan. So convening each of those 2 years. Happy to take any questions you might have.
So this is so that the FIDDLE members can attend Rusty Duncan course, is that right?
Yeah, so at Rusty Duncan, every year we've done this. All of the fiddlers or young attorneys meet up. And this is the first time that they meet. It's the first time they meet their mentors, and they have some basic training and things like that before the program's kicked off.
So it's not to attend it, right, Jeff? It's once they are paying to attend it, then we have a FIDDLE kickoff. Is that what it is? Or do they get to go to the seminar? We pay for that as well.
Yeah, Edwin, go ahead. Sorry.
So what we do is we've negotiated a discounted rate for the participants in the program to attend Rusty Duncan, and combined that with the fiddle kickoff that Jeff was describing. So the difference, the thing that's being proposed to be added to the grant is the negotiated discounted rate for the participants to be part of the Rusty Duncan event, to participate in the Rusty Duncan event, which serves as the kind of kickoff to their fiddle program.
And Judge Maneri,
I didn't really follow. I didn't really understand what the answer was then. Is it to attend the Rusty Duncan course and the kickoff, or just the kickoff? I mean, do they get to?
So this amount that's being proposed to be added to the award, which is about $10,000 for 2022, would cover the cost of the reduced cost for the participants to go to the kickoff, which is for all intents and purposes attached to the Rusty Duncan conference. So this amount includes their participation in the Rusty Duncan conference.
It's both, Judge. Yeah.
Okay.
But Judge
So
Maneri, I'm sorry, Judge, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I'm still confused as well. So they still have to pay, but they get a reduced amount. Is that for that? Like if it's, I don't know how much Rusty Duncan is. If it's $500 to go, is it $300 for them now and the fiddle thing?
The cost of their participation at Rusty Duncan would be covered by the grant.
Perfect. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
I'm sorry, it wasn't clear.
That's all right.
Judge Madera, you triggered something that one note, just so you all know, I mean, we're not recommending to fund something that we have funded in previous years, and that was membership to TCDLA for people involved in the fiddle program. The reason we're not recommending that this year, and I'm not including that here, is that the comptroller's advice on funding membership to organizations has changed. And so we are not recommending that. We're just recommending the funding for the kickoff and for Rusty Duncan.
Okay. I mean, for a minute there, it sounded like we were paying $300 a piece for people to go to a kickoff party.
Right, right. No, it's the full kind of shebang. Yeah.
Okay.
That should be one heck of a party then, right?
Right.
Okay. Is there a motion to increase the FY22 improvement grant to Harris County for the statewide fiddle program to $199,557?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
I abstain.
Thank you all. Thank you. So our next issue is the FY 2023 improvement grant request for applications. And Doriana, or would you like to lay this one out for us?
Yeah, thank you, Edwin. If I could direct y'all to page 25 of our meeting book for a quick overview on our improvement grant RFA. Each year we issue the improvement grant request for applications, and we've included a link to the draft in our meeting book. As far as changes, we've updated dates, including the new priority application due date of May 2nd. And we've also, the substantive changes include new legislation, HB 295, that now allows nonprofit entities to receive grants from TIDC. But as far as other changes, those dates and nonprofits, that's our big change for our improvement grant RFA. And if there aren't any questions, the staff recommendation is to issue the FY 2023 improvement grant request for applications.
Is there a motion to issue the FY23 improvement grant request for applications?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
I think Jeff's going to take the next item.
Thank you, Edwin. So in addition to the normal RFA, we're recommending, as we did last year, a supplemental RFA. This year, we're recommending that for two reasons. One, as I mentioned in my director's report, the legislature appropriated $14 million for backlog reduction across the state. So we're recommending supplemental RFA so we can get that money out to counties a little bit sooner. If you remember, the normal RFA, after this board funds a project, those funds aren't available until October normally. The issue with the backlog is that backlog exists now and the counties need the help now. So by doing the supplemental RFA, we can get those funds out pretty much immediately to the counties. In addition to that, I want to flag one thing. What we're recommending as part of that supplemental RFA is allowing counties to request up to 100% funding for backlog reduction. So it would not require a county match. So that's unique to this. It's not something we normally do for our improvement grant projects, but we think that's important here to incentivize counties to request those funds and get these funds out the door quickly so we can start reducing that backlog. The backlog, you may remember, we're talking about roughly 70,000 misdemeanors and 70,000 felonies across the state. The second reason we wanted to recommend a supplemental RFA is the same reason we did last year, which is we have a mental health fund rider on our budget. Basically, we have got about $5 million that are devoted to mental health funds for public defense across the state. By doing a supplemental RFA, it allows us to address kind of the slightly different rules we have for mental health funds, and it allows us to track those funds separately so we can report back to the legislature on how they're spent. So that's a recommendation from staff, is that basically directing us to do a supplemental RFA. Happy to take any questions you have.
Is there a motion to issue a supplemental request for application for special appropriations, including the policies on page 26 of the meeting notebook?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Does that conclude the grants and reporting?
We
I believe
have,
it does. Edwin, anything else? I believe it does.
Yeah, we have a report from Deborah regarding fiscal monitoring. And that
Okay.
generally falls under grants and reporting.
Oh, okay.
All right, go ahead, Deborah.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So starting on page 27 in the meeting notebook and going to page 30, I've outlined the fiscal monitoring activity since the August board meeting. And just to kind of summarize, I have begun 3 new reviews. Those are on Kinney, Cameron, and Hidalgo counties. I have 5 counties with initial fiscal reports pending issue at this time. And we got 2 final reports out, and that was to Dallas County and Montgomery County. 3 counties submitted their comprehensive annual financial report and their single audit. So I got those reviewed, and nothing significant was reported in there that we need to be aware of. And this time of year, we're doing a lot of IDER work. And so Edwin, Crystal, and I made a presentation to the county auditors at their fall conference. This was to help them make sure that they're aware of the new changes that were happening and stuff. So it was an in-person conference held in Corpus. It was really nice to get out, get out of the office for a little bit and do a little traveling. And then right now, we're just really heavily involved in the desk reviews of the IDERs. But that's my report. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to help answer.
And Judge Maderi, if you look at past monthly director's reports that I send out, there's a good photo of our staff next to the Selena statue down in Nueces County.
I was like, I can't believe you all didn't call me. I would have shown you, I would have had lunch with you all at least, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, call me next time you're in my neck of the woods. We'll have some entertainment. Judge Keller, if I can, just for a second, I don't know if it was done beforehand, but I think it's always great to celebrate our own. And I just wanted to congratulate Megan Bradbury, who received her CAP, her Certified Administrative Professional Certificate. And so I just, I know that Jeff had put it out there on Facebook, and I saw it and I was so delighted. And so I just wanted to say, congratulations from all of us to Megan.
Thank you very
Judge.
much.
Yeah, congratulations, Megan.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
See what you miss when you're not on social media, right?
Yeah.
Although I'm about to go to a CLE that says the ethics on social media. I'm like, all right, I'm going to jump on that one.
Yeah.
And Judge, I think that concludes grants and reporting. Is that right, Edwin? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Judge Maderi.
You're welcome.
Improvement team report, is that what's next?
That's right, Judge. I think we've got Scott and Kathleen.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Almost afternoon. If you turn to page 31 and 32, you'll see our improvement team report there. A few highlights that I wanted to give to y'all on page 32 is a list of some of the trainings that we were invited to attend, including one by the Texas Association of Counties, a judicial education conference that they had for the county judges in Bernie on November 17th. Went down there and gave a presentation with the Bexar County Chief Public Defender, Michael Young, on indigent defense and mental health. That was very well received. Michael talked about his the programs that they have in the PD's office directed at defendants with mental illness. And I had talked a bit about our programming and grants for mental health defender programs. Met a number of county judges there who expressed interest in establishing a rural regional public defender office. So we've done some follow-up with them. Also, after I presented, Judge Evans and Schuart gave presentations on the Hill Country Public Defender Office. That was very well received as well. So frankly, I was almost embarrassed at the conference because there was just like so much love for TIDC that it was really kind of overwhelming. So, but also very cool to see the level of interest and appreciation for the work that TIDC does. So thought y'all should know about that. We also, as part of that trip, we did a number of interviews that we video recorded. Y'all saw that earlier. And so we're going to have other videos that we're going to be able to put together on things like counsel at magistration, mental health defender programs, you know, the benefits of public defender offices in general, rural regional public defenders. So we're going to have a lot that will come out of those interviews that we did. In addition to that, also wanted to update you on our program that we're doing with NACDL, National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, on investigator usage in Texas. We got a grant, a federal grant that they are, you know, overseeing. They're providing us with technical assistance, and they're going to be doing research and a report on the use of investigators in Texas. We just finished up a survey that is out in the field right now, where we're going to be surveying investigators and their practices in the state. So if you have any questions about that, you know some investigators who work on appointing cases, then please let me know. So we want to make sure that they get that survey and fill it out. Now, Kathleen is going to talk a bit about the future indigent defense leaders and the juvenile training immersion program.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. So to provide just a brief update on both of our programs, with the Future Indigent Defense Leaders project, applications are currently open for the third class. So that's very exciting. We already have over 30 applicants that have applied, and that's even before I've heard from a number of chiefs that will be submitting people. This program will take place in Texas for the first time. We're bringing Gideon's Promise to Texas. And the 2-week training boot camp will take place in April in San Antonio, followed up with 5 returning weekends right here in the state. So that's really good news that that's moving along. Also, to update you on the juvenile training immersion project, that's where we've partnered with TCDLA and the National Juvenile Defender Center to bring this really immersive in-person hands-on training here to Texas. We've actually completed 3 of the dates so far, 3 of the 5 in person. So we've been to Austin, Houston, and Lubbock. Next year, we'll be visiting Dallas, McAllen, and El Paso, as well as 2 virtual dates. And reviews so far on this, and this is not an exaggeration, they've really been overwhelmingly positive. Lawyers have really responded to the way you get to actually practice your skills in these projects. And a lot of this success has been in part to bringing on Bill Cox to our team, who not only is an JTIP certified trainer, he has that familiarity with the network. So we've been able to really get out there and do a lot of really great work. So happy to answer questions on either of those programs.
Thank you, Kathleen. Anything else, Scott or Kathleen?
No, Judge, thanks. That's it.
Okay, thanks very much. Time for the improvement. Oh, no, the policies and standards.
Thanks,
Alex
Judge.
Brennan, please.
So the first item is a report from Wesley on indigent defense plan submissions.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about the indigent defense plans. Those were due, as they always are, biannually on November 1st, 2021. The process this year was a little bit different because we were incorporating the new CPS Judicial Plans, which Crystal's going to talk about as soon as I finish. We were also developing a new website for that, and so they were a little bit late getting out the instructions. And this meeting is a little bit early, so our compliance rate is slightly down. 187 counties have fully submitted their plans for criminal as well as juvenile delinquency cases. 67 are outstanding. We've been in regular communication with the judges who are in charge of those plans, and we'll get further contacts from us in the weeks ahead, including the formula grant statement of grant awards, which go out in January with the special conditions that Doriana highlighted. This year for the review, it's a more streamlined process because the legislature didn't impose any new requirements for these plans. So the main things we'll be reviewing are changes that were made, amendments that the courts made to their plans, as well as checking for new current contracts. Those counties that use contracts for indigent defense services will be following up on those. But that's it for my report, unless you have any questions. All right, thank you.
So next is Crystal on CPS Judicial Plans.
Hi, everybody. Hello again. So in your board materials, there's information about the CPS Judicial Plans from page 34 to 37. I can't help myself. I want to share everything with you all, so I put some charts in there. I'm not going to go through everything. But similar to the financial expenditure reporting that was required November 1, the legislature is now requiring counties to report on what they're doing for their judicial plans. Now, the term plan is it may not be the right way to explain it. It's not exactly how the criminal indigent defense plans have been. We're kind of on a fact-finding mission at this point with the judicial plans. So what Wesley and I worked on was more of a easy to use form that judges can there's buttons and drop-down menus and a few text boxes. So we can get a good baseline of what's happening in the counties, because prior to this report, we just didn't know. So very exciting. We've had really wonderful compliance from the counties on the CPS reports. We've had so far 214 counties as of November 18th had fully completed the process, which is really great considering this was brand new. And instructions went out on October 11th. I also checked these numbers the other day and they looked about the same. So right now we still have 34 counties that have yet to start a plan. We are sending out reminder emails to people. I'll start giving phone calls, in the future to reach out to those counties that have yet to report anything. I think one of the reasons why we got such great compliance is one of the things we did was we reached out to the child protection court judges that run some regional child protection courts. They don't cover the whole state, but they cover a lot of it. And I think that helped as well to give them that information. And we're working with the Public Policy Research Institute to come up with some good data reports for this information. This is all brand new for us. So we're gathering this info and we're trying to make really good sense of it. I've got some highlights in those pages if you're interested. I know we don't have enough time to get through everything, but should anyone have any questions about any of this, please reach out, either ask questions now, call me later. I'm happy to talk about it. And I would just like to say, as a former person who worked on these cases for over 10 years. This is beyond exciting that we're doing this. I just went and talked to the UT Children's Rights Clinic yesterday about policy with some other people, and everyone was really excited that we're doing this. So this is really wonderful work, and I'm really happy to be here doing this with y'all.
I have a quick question. Who are you working with at PPRI?
So I've worked a lot with Jim Van Beek, who's the tech. He does all the tech stuff that I don't know how to do. And he's working with me on creating these reports. He's been really responsive. And we've got quite a few now that I think are going to be really helpful in making sense of all of this as we move forward.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so next is Joel on attorney reports and statistics.
Thank you, Mr. Bunnan. Beginning on page 38, I have more statistics. I know you'll hear a lot of numbers today. Please just bear with us. If you have questions, feel free to interject. First of all, I'd like to note that Edwin said previously that our indigent defense expense review process is not complete. So bear in mind, all of this is preliminary data and some of it may change. TIDC collects information from a few different sources. One of those is auditors and treasurers. They must report to us every year. Since 2014, all the amounts that they paid to each attorney and the cases for which those attorneys were paid. As of this past Sunday, a total of 4,866 attorneys had received payment for indigent defense services. This is down from previous years. When we first started collecting this information, more than 6,000 attorneys received payment, and now we're under 5,000. We believe that COVID is a major factor in this decrease, but there may be other factors as well. Most attorneys who take appointments, they do not have excessive caseloads. Some of them do. The median percent of time or the median caseload that attorneys had was 24% of the weighted caseload guidelines. And the weighted caseload guidelines come from a report conducted by PPRI that said that the maximum caseload that they recommended an attorney take in a year was 128 felonies, 226 misdemeanors, or 31 appeals. So most attorneys have appointed caseloads that are well below that. And this 24% was down from previous years. So most appointed caseloads are quite manageable. A few attorneys do have high caseloads. About 10% of those reported to receive payment had caseloads above this number, and a few had very excessive caseloads. There were 2 attorneys that had more than 5 times recommended by the weighted caseload guidelines, and there were 25 that had more than 3 times recommended by the weighted caseload guidelines. All of these numbers are down from pre-COVID levels. TIDC also collects information from attorneys. Every year, attorneys have to submit the percent of their practice time devoted to indigent defense cases in each county. We've struggled in the past to get attorneys to report this number. We were a little more successful this year. As of Monday, we had 3,344 attorneys having submitted this report. Since then, we've had a few hundred more submit the report. So well north of 70% of attorneys have submitted their practice time reports, and that's the highest report rate that we've ever had. In order to do this, we have to partner with different organizations. We've partnered with PPRI, the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, the chief public defenders, and individual counties themselves. On November the 3rd, we sent emails to all counties, and this email listed the amounts each attorney was paid for and whether those attorneys had submitted their practice time report. The counties have been very helpful in reminding attorneys to report. We sent another reminder this past Tuesday, and that's why attorneys are still reporting en masse. And so I just want to send my appreciation to all our partners who've helped ensure that we receive regular reports from attorneys. As far as the information on this report, I believe what it shows is that while most attorneys have appointed caseloads that are not excessive, appointed cases take up a large part of their practice. Excluding public defender offices, appointed casework takes up 60, as a median, 68% of attorneys' practice time. which is quite significant. So as we have now on page, I believe 39, we have caseload information. These are two tables which show those attorneys which have 4 times the weighted caseload guidelines or more. Highlighted attorneys were present as having excessive caseloads both in FY21 and FY20. And a number of these attorneys were on both lists. Continuing on to page 40, as I mentioned, auditors report the amount that attorneys were paid to us. Most attorneys do not make a lot of money on appointments. The median amount of paid for the year was a little over $18,000. However, some attorneys get paid a lot of money. This last year, there were 22 attorneys that received more than $300,000 in appointed cases. Last year, we had one attorney that had broken our previous record, and he made over $750,000 last year. We were not sure if it was an aberration, and it doesn't look like it was, because this year he made more than $800,000. And some of these attorneys were on both lists. 8 of these attorneys that received more than $300,000 also did last year. So if we could continue on to page 42. We have appointed, the previous page, please, Megan. We have appointment rates for both felony and misdemeanor cases. This year, preliminarily, it looks like there's been a drop in appointment rates, but I think this will be corrected as soon as we complete our indigent defense expense reports. There were a couple counties that haven't properly submitted their case totals, and I think we're going to be close to being in line with past years once those reports are complete. And then finally, the next page is our estimate of pro se misdemeanor cases. These are cases without counsel. This year, preliminarily, it looks like the pro se rates are up, but I think that total will be corrected once we complete our indigent defense expense review. As we've seen in previous years, small counties have a much higher percent of their cases without counsel than large counties. In large counties, it's not very common to see pro se misdemeanor defendants, but in small counties, it's very common. And mid-sized counties are somewhat in between. And that concludes my statistical report. Are there any questions?
Yeah, hi, this is Val. This is Commissioner Covey. So Harris County has the largest amounts being paid out to attorneys. And that was, I believe, the same as last year. It seems to be a trend. And they have a separate defense department. So are we continuing to, is TDIC paying them? Are we out of that? And why do you think it's so much for outside attorneys?
I can speak to this a little bit, Commissioner. This is Jeff Burkhart, and I can pass it on to Joel in a minute. There is a public defender office, as you all know, and the chief public defender, Alex Bunden's on our board. But Alex's office takes a relatively small percentage. I think, Alex, between 15 and 20% of the cases right now, in that ballpark.
It's about 20. It's going up, but it's about 20% right now.
So the remaining cases are handled by private assigned counsel. We've made significant improvements, I think, on the misdemeanor side, Commissioner, because TIDC helped fund a managed assigned counsel system for misdemeanor cases down in Harris County. And I think that's really affecting, it's starting to really affect kind of the caseloads and the payments on the misdemeanor side. There is talk about expanding that managed assigned counsel system, or MAC, to felonies and juvenile cases. And if that happens, I think we'll see a switch here as well. But right now, you're exactly right. I mean, looking, for instance, on page 40, the top paid attorneys, largely that's from Harris County. That's accurate. Joel or Alex, I don't know if you all had anything to add to that.
Well, getting that information this morning, I did some quick math, and if I was to replace those, and I would need more lawyers to cover all those cases, but even then, if I added the 30 lawyers to replace the 20 that are making close to $8 million, we would save the county $4 million. So it is not a very good, efficient system.
Wow. So I have a quick question too. My doorbell rang and I had to go, so I don't know if I missed this, but so when I read all these things where, it says this is the amount that you're supposed to have on the weighted caseload, and then I feel like when we get these reports, it'll be like, it's like, yeah, this is what you're supposed to have on the weighted caseload, but here are all these attorneys and they have way more than that. And so, I was talking to one of the, and I'm asking Jeff to stay on afterwards so that we can chat on this in regards to looking at a feasibility study for public defender's office in Nueces County. And I was in jury trial this week, and I just, when we were waiting on a verdict, I had downtime and I was talking to the defense attorney, and I don't think he knew that I had a, presiding judge hat or a TIDC hat when we were talking, but I was talking to him and I'm like, what about with the weighted caseload? And we were talking about that. And basically he said, well, it's reported at the end of the year and it's already done and they don't do anything about it. So we really don't pay attention to it. And I know he didn't know I was on TIDC, but when he said that to me, I just was like, my jaw kind of dropped on the ground because it was almost like they said, yeah, we were allowed 5 candies. We took 10, but no one said anything. So we don't care. And so I don't know how to bring that to your attention, except just by telling you right now. But what do you all think about that? Is there any oversight, or we just say you were only supposed to take 5 candies, but you took 10 and we don't care?
Well, you could create the oversight. If you made it a condition of all the formula grants that they be in line, then they would have to do that. But the commission's been putting caseload maximums in grants at least since I started Harris County, so it can be done. It's just a matter of, is that something everyone agrees to do?
We've struggled with this though for off and on for years as to how you actually can enforce the weighted caseload. And I think we've even questioned how the weighted caseload study was done, because we've had this discussion before. Rural versus, large municipalities, attorneys who practice in multiple jurisdictions. It's not that, I don't think it's that simple. I think we should look at it, but I don't think it's that simple as to come down on the counties and say your formula grant. They can't control what other jurisdictions, like most of the attorneys that come out to Medina. Of course, now we've got a PDO, so it's so much better, but they practice in multiple jurisdictions. These judges don't know how many cases. That's not being monitored by the courts. It's complex. I think it's really complicated, and it would be worthwhile to look at it and see how can we, or what can we do. I had a question to go back onto page 39. When you put the attorney caseloads as of November 28th, 2021, are you saying that these top caseloads people are not in compliance with the weighted caseload?
Judge, well, we've never adopted the weighted caseload guidelines, but yes, they're well above the guidelines. That's what I'm saying.
Well, it says public defenders. How can that be?
Well,
public defender offices that predate TIDC.
Okay.
So we have 7 counties where there are PD offices that predate us. And as you pointed out, Judge, anytime we plan a new public defender office, we do build in those caseload guidelines and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, Judge Maderi, that's one of the things that Medina County, the regional PDO for here, is that is worked into our grant, where the attorneys in the PDO cannot exceed the weighted caseload guidelines. So, but it's going to be hard. I'm not saying it's not something that we shouldn't try to look at, but I'm just saying we've got to be really careful. It's very delicate as to how you decide that you're going to try to get compliance. It's always difficult to get compliance. Even when I was dealing with court-appointed attorneys, you can't even get compliance on appearing in court. And it's not necessarily a tool to say, oh, you're off my list, because when you have a list of, like Judge Evans, I think he used to have like 3 or 5 people. I had like anywhere between 10 to 15, depending on how many people were seeking experience in order to go back to Bexar County and practice and make more money. So it's complicated. The attorney accountability.
I agree with Judge Torres. It's much more complicated than just saying, here's caseload limit, stick to it, or you don't get any money. Because first of all, we don't provide most of the money for counties. They pay for it themselves. And second of all, we don't want to take money from counties. We want counties to have the money that we've been appropriated. So there are a lot of factors to consider. And I think we ought to look at it too. But it's not going to be simple. It's never been simple.
Judge, if it's helpful, I can give just a brief description of currently what we do that affects caseloads, and then maybe mention some possible paths forward. I mean, basically, I think there are essentially three things that TIDC does in this realm. I mean, one is that we do have those caseload guidelines. So when counties ask or public defender offices ask, what's a reasonable number, we have a decent sense of where that number is. So we have kind of a reference point. As Judge Torres points out, I think there's room for reasonable minds to disagree about where do you draw that line. Maybe it's a little bit higher, maybe it's a little bit lower. But regardless of where you draw that line, I mean, I think as we look at our caseload guidelines in Texas, they're very similar to the ones that we have in about 24 other states. The numbers are roughly in line. So I think there's a reasonable to adjust that maybe up 15%, 20%, 25%. But we're seeing in some instances attorneys who have 500% of the caseload limits. And I think all of us would agree it's just too far. So I think there's some room to figure out where to draw the line. But the first thing we're doing is we do have caseload guidelines, so it's a reference point. The second thing we do is exactly what Joel's been doing, which is reporting on this just so the board knows kind of where these cases are at. As Joel pointed out, the vast majority of attorneys taking indigent defense cases don't have excessive caseloads. But the ones who do have a disproportionate number of cases, so that there's a very good, decent chance that if you're a criminal defendant in Texas, you may end up with an attorney with an excessive caseload of some sort. The last thing we're doing, as Judge Torres pointed out, is when we help build these new systems, public defender offices, managed assigned counsel systems, we do help we base those on those guidelines and help bring in reasonable caseloads. So those are kind of three things that we're doing right now. One is, again, we just have the guidelines as a reference point. Two, we do this reporting to y'all and to the public. And then three, we use those guidelines to build in, new public defender offices and managed assigned counsel systems. I agree with pretty much everything I've heard today. One of the things, and this is really up to the board, this is not a staff decision, but if you all wanted to direct us to go and maybe give you some options on how to address caseloads, we'd be happy to devote some staff time to that and just bring you options that you could consider and decide what direction to go in. But that's not something that I feel like we should do on the staff side without really getting your guidance on that.
Jeff, this Valerie, I guess really the first step is the why, and each county may have a different reason why. Those that don't have very many attorneys on the list or that would even take these cases are going to be an issue. That's one issue. You have a Harris County that has probably such a magnitude of caseload. You need all the tools. I don't know, your own department as well as. I'm just amazed that. So I guess I go back to my why. The reason why, if Harris County has a reason why they're paying if it's the same people every year, favorites, they'll do it. I mean, I don't know what the reason is, but I'm looking at it from TIDC's perspective of if we're going to fund a public defender's department and at the same time, they're going to spend their money outside of that. Why? And is something broken with that aspect? Can they not get enough people that want to be employed? Is it more costly? Because I know our benefits are like 30% of salary. So that's an expensive thing to bring on. Maybe it's cheaper to have it outside. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the why is it happening, because we're concerned about the caseload. Also, we're spending taxpayer dollars on either way. On trying to solve a problem. Are we solving it? Is it being solved in multiple ways? So I don't know. I have more questions than answers here, but I'm just wondering how it should work is we're promoting public defenders offices, it sounds like, through previous discussions even today and every time we meet. Is it working? So there you go.
Yeah, I would say, to the public defender office question, definitely public defender offices, we've got really good studies on this showing that they're working better. But I would say the excessive caseload issue in particular, Commissioner, you make a good point. It's not an issue that's limited to either private assigned counsel or to public defender offices. We're seeing it in both. And again, in the cases of public defender offices, it is in public defender offices that predate TIDC that we did not have a hand in creating. The private bar, regardless of whether we create public defender offices, the private bar will always have a hand in indigent defense provision. They're always going to be an important part of that, in part because of conflicts and the rise and fall of caseload numbers. So, yeah, you bring up several really good questions, and like I said, I mean, I defer to the board on what direction you want to give us as far as this issue.
Well, I view what Commissioner Covey is saying as different than what we're saying on the weighted caseload. I think, Commissioner Covey, that Harris County ought to be investigating why this is happening, because that is just insane that someone would make probably, what is that, like 5 times, my math is really bad, the salary of a district judge on court-appointed counsel. Something.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I think that, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's different. Remember, TIDC is not necessarily, I mean, sure, our grant goes to Harris County, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to what Harris County is spending on their indigent defense. So this right here should go to their county judge, and somebody ought to be asking some serious questions. I
have a county commissioner who complains about it all the time. Somebody Rodney Ellis.
Press get involved? I mean, this is great press stuff.
There was an article in the New York Times about it.
Okay.
Yeah, a ways back.
Every couple of years there's an article in the Houston Chronicle, and people get upset for about 5 minutes, and then nothing happens.
Shocking. I mean, this is a lot of money. If you just add the couple of, the first 5 lines, it's in the millions. It's astounding. But that to me is different than the weighted case. What do they call that? Weighted case?
The guidelines. Yeah.
Yeah. And these guys, none of these guys are public defenders because they couldn't possibly make that much money. The public defender's offices work. Now, yeah, they probably need some, I don't know who. I have a vague recollection because I wasn't really involved in the formation of the one for Medina County and Kerr and all that, but they have their own governing boards, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So the ones that were formed prior to TIDC becoming involved, we have the grant requirement that we can't exceed those caseloads. But like Alex, your office, you don't have that. So you have a board though that can adopt those guidelines, right?
Well, when we got our initial grant, they had maximum caseloads in it. And one of the specifications in the grant is the only way we could change them is if the board approves. So the board does monitor our caseload.
Wouldn't that be the case in every public defender's office if their governing board would monitor their caseloads?
If their grant's written that way and their bylaws state so.
Maybe that would be an approach for TIDC, is to go to these board meetings or perhaps reach out to the head of the board, the chairman or whatever, to talk about those issues initially, just to gather information.
And Judge Torres, I'd mentioned, yeah, I mean, Alex's office was created with TIDC funds, and that's part of the reason they do have a board, and they were created with caseload limits. Really, the 7 counties that have public defender offices that predate TIDC, to my knowledge, none of them have caseload limits. To my knowledge, none of them have boards doing oversight.
How could that be? I mean, I recognize one of the names on the attorneys that have excessive caseloads that's in the public defender's office, and part of her problem might be Operation Lone Star.
Yeah.
But I would just be curious. I don't know. So you're saying that there's no oversight on some of the public defender's offices?
Well, I'm saying there's no oversight board. Some of them report directly to the commissioner's court or something like that. But the ones that predate us, and please TIDC staff, correct me if I'm wrong, to my knowledge, I don't think any of those have an oversight board. That's correct.
Well, maybe that would be a good starting point for us, is to identify each public defender's office and to determine how they were formed and what their governing documents are, whatever they're required to follow. Start gathering information on that, and then from there develop an approach, and possibly initially to reach out. And maybe they're not even aware of the weighted caseload guidance, whatever. God, I cannot think about that WCG or whatever it is. I hate acronyms, but anyway, the guidance to see, you know, maybe it's a lack of knowledge or I don't know.
I suspect it has to do with money. That they have a limited staff and they have lots of cases, and that's probably the biggest driver for the PD's offices having excessive caseloads.
Yeah, money's always a problem
Mhm.
if you don't have it.
And I'll mention just very briefly, Judge Torres, too. One of the counties that predates TIDC is Dallas Public Defender, and they do have their misdemeanor attorneys, for instance, have 1,200 cases per year per attorney, which are, is about 5 times our guidelines. We are in pretty frequent conversations with them, and they are very interested in trying to lower their caseloads. I don't think we're going to get them anywhere within the caseload guidelines, but again, regardless of where you draw the line, I think 1,200 misdemeanors a year is probably far, far too many.
Yeah.
So we are talking to them, for instance, about making some changes. The tougher thing, I think, is where private assigned counsel have caseloads in that realm, where there's, again, no public defender office, no oversight board to talk to.
Yeah, in this money business.
Right.
So I guess we're ready to go on. Joel, you want to do policy monitoring?
Thanks, Mr. Bunnan. On page 44, we have a summary of recent policy monitoring activity. Since the August meeting, we have not issued any new reports, but we have several that are about to be issued. Currently, the Policies and Standards Committee is reviewing 3 reports, and after that, we have several more queued up for them to review. I want to extend my appreciation to all the P&S members because this is a lot of work, and we really are thankful for what they do. As far as our recent on-site reviews, we've gone to Tom Green, Taylor, Kinney, Maverick, and Zavala counties. That was since the August meeting. Prior to that, when COVID began, we had stopped doing on-site reviews, and we tried to gather all this data virtually. We were able to gather a fair amount of data, but in general, could not complete most monitoring reviews. But now, as we're able to go on-site, we're able to complete several reviews. The Kinney County review was a limited scope monitoring review looking at the appointment procedures in misdemeanor cases. This review came at the request of Chair Collier. On page 45, there is a letter from her in which she requested a review. We haven't yet issued that report, but Nick Sawyer and I went to the county and we're gathering information and are drafting the report. And then finally, continuing on to page 46, every year after the Indigent Defense Expense report is completed, I run a risk assessment, and then staff meet and we make a tentative monitoring schedule. This document just goes over the factors that go into that risk assessment, and feel free to read it at your leisure. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you so much.
Okay, last item is about complaints. Nick Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Bunnan. Good afternoon, members. For those I haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Nicholas Sawyer. I'm a new policy analyst at TIDC, and I'll be providing the quarterly complaints update. So the 2 updates I would like to provide include our new process for receiving and responding to complaints, and some notable complaints that we've received since the last board meeting. So the notable complaints. So since the last quarterly meeting, TIDC has received 24 new complaints, which is consistent with last quarter where there were 27. The majority of the complaints that we received alleged either that the complainant's court-appointed defense attorney wasn't timely communicating with their client as required under state statute, or that the attorney was not abiding the client's decisions around litigation as required under Texas ethics rules for attorneys, like whether to proceed to trial or whether to plead guilty for an offense. The counties that were the subject of the most complaints were Lubbock County and Victoria County. In both cases, TIDC reached out to the counties to verify the status of those cases, and both responded with detailed information and took action. Finally, we received a complaint about San Jacinto County that alleged the county did not have a process for appointing counsel before the person's first appearance after adversarial proceedings had been initiated against that person. And so TIDC contacted the county. They responded indicating that they now have a system in place and will continue to monitor. So the second update I have is around our new process. A little bit of background. Historically, a significant number of complaints that TIDC receives are actually requests for legal aid or innocence claims, not issues with indigent defense practices. And so our new process sought to address these very quickly by responding to all the complaints that we receive with a stock form letter that contains the most common types of legal referrals that we make at the very outset in order to save time trying to write individualized letters to each person. And so with this new process, it takes approximately a quarter to half the time to process complaints using this new process. This concludes the quarterly complaints report. Happy to answer any questions.
And that also concludes policies and standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Jeff, when is our next meeting going to be?
We're going to send out, I think, next week a doodle poll to, but it's going to be sometime in March, as long as we can get enough members, which I think we. And the judge, the issue on that, I know you and I have spoken about this, but whether to do that meeting virtually or in person, I don't know if you want us to send an email about that or discuss that now. I defer to you.
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm ready to come back in person if the other members of the board are, and we can. I know we can't wait till the last minute, but we can make the decision. We don't have to make the decision today. What does everybody think?
In person.
I second your motion.
Okay, let's try to do it in person.
Yay. I might not be on anymore. I think my term expires pretty soon. Did you ever figure that out, Jeff?
We're waiting. So Judge Torres, you're with us. Well, as long as you're willing to be with us, you're with us until the governor appoints somebody new.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We're waiting to hear back.
Great.
Is there any new business? Public comment? All right, then. We are adjourned. Everybody have a great Christmas, and we will be in touch about the meeting when we get more details. Okay?
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.